Hello everybody and welcome back to This is the Year. This is our 44th episode. We took a few weeks of a breather, but based on my facial expressions, I didn't sleep that much the last few weeks. We were pushing heavy on the latest developments and that's, again, Schwau with me today. How are you doing, my friend? I'm currently in a Claude Code background. That's kind of how I feel. 24/7 running agents. But how are you today?
Sleep has been somewhat optional. Too many things to do, too many things to think about, but it is kind of a human requirement, at least for now. Waiting and holding for the moment that we'll transfer ourselves into some kind of CPU-based life form, but I don't see that happening in the next 15 years. At least I haven't seen a poly-market bet on it.
You're still here in the physical form. Good. For the audience, today we have a compact episode planned. We're talking about the secrets for great AI agents in production. So more on that just in a few seconds. Highlight of this will be skill engineering. We talked about that multiple times since September 2025, but now more advanced elements like harness engineering. What is really enabling large language models into the wild, aka the AI agents, to elapse their full potential. That's usually harnesses and skills and not entirely only the large language model that we see on all these benchmarks. We also briefly deep dive into some OpenAI potential PR question. We talked about skill marketplaces, what we also maybe showcased already in December, but there has been an update. And maybe at the very end, just 1-2 seconds on software as a service. What's the state of software, especially if we move into this agentic world? So software as a service TAM versus agentic AI TAM. Where is this whole story heading? So the first point, though, is the harness engineering capability of, again, making the agent actually really useful in production system. What's the definition from your end? What is a harness? Why do we need a harness? And how could this actually look like?
We began with definition of tools, I think, last year or the last 2 years. When tools became a thing, was the way to connect the agent to the outside world. And 1 or 2 tools would be probably enough for the tasks that we were doing at the time. But as things progressed, models got better. Models got better at choosing what tool to use and how to use them. And now we speak in terms of toolkits or tool sets. The term that we all came to agree on was harness, basically a tool harness. It's a group of tools and instructions on how to use them. And in this case, for coding agents is, for example, the ability to edit the files and run your program, maybe open the browser and see how your website looks or how things are going there. It is the set of tools that allow the agent to actually operate and interact with your software. You saw the greatest example of having a good harness was OpenClaw, which had all the coding harnesses that coding agents like Copilot already did, but it added all the tools that people were missing in day-to-day life, access to the normal files for the computer, to your calendar, to your email, access to WhatsApp or Telegram. I think most people are using Telegram to talk to it, and are still using it. I think other people bought Mac Minis to use iMessage. So all those tools are just simple tools, or can be a set of tools, but allow the agent to actually operate and interact with you. So people would not have to open a specific app. They could just talk to it through the iMessage. And so harness is important. And I think companies are developing their own and trying to figure out a bit and struggle because it is a new thing. But it is the way that we connect the agents, these models, these very expensive models, to the outside world.
So maybe just if you're completely maybe new or recent builder, if you want to build anything similar or close to OpenAI or maybe Claude desktop app, you would assume that the out-of-the-box Opus 4.6 model comes with a harness, but that's usually not the case. So they kind of have this behind their paywall, and Anthropic does. So you pay, for example, $200 a month, like I do every month, and it's basically coming out of the box with this harness. Because sometimes when I'm talking to individuals or some of my students, is like, why would I even pay this subscription if I can get it on Bedrock AWS anyway? It's because if you get it on Bedrock, 99% of the harness that you would get in the Claude app is not available out of the box in Bedrock. So that's why you have this kind of premium that you would pay, because the large language model by Anthropic is shipped with a harness and an array of skills that if you want to basically reverse engineer, you would need to build entirely by yourself. So that's a little bit the value proposition also of paying $200. I came from not paying at all for Claude to like this $20 pro subscription to now to the max subscription. I think in the last, especially 2 months since Claude Code and Claude Cowork came about, because most of the time, the LLM per se, if you look on the 4.5 opus to 4.6 opus, the increase wasn't that significant in terms of intelligence capability. What did increase significantly, though, is this harness capability, tool calling or tool set and tool array capability, and the connectors. So that's really what really made probably a lot of people pivot from Pro to Max. And also we see coding agents being incredibly much better because of better harnesses. We see other types of agents like Excel, PowerPoint agents being a lot better because of the harness and because of the skills that are now being injected into the system. So I think this is also leading to new opportunities, especially for businesses or builders like maybe you in the audience. Develop these skills, develop the harnesses to businesses, because most of the time, many of these businesses, they are not aware that you need actually harness to run on a large language model. So there's a little bit of a gap in that case. So is it still the case that we might see some skill marketplaces coming up, or what's the latest? I think in November, we probably announced it. This might come, and what's the state there?
We already have some version of that. OpenClaw has like this kind of platform for people to upload prompts and skills that they developed and share them with the world. I think it's hard as a marketplace or as a business to sell these skills directly, because A, they're going to be very specific to what you're doing, and B, at the end of the day, unless you build a very specific tool, a very specific connector for the agent to talk to some CRM, some SAP software or whatever, it's going to end up coming down to some set of instructions. And that's very easily replicated, even if it's not as good. If you can have 95% of the skill for free, you're going to choose the free version. I think people are going for very expensive models exactly because even if the instructions aren't the best, even if they don't write the full paragraph of what they want, the models are good enough. The good models are good enough that they understand you and they get you to what you want to get. So skill marketplace, yes, as an actual market or an actual business, it might not be. At least not in the near future. We might see new kinds of skills coming up or very specific skills, but mostly I think going to be developed. People are going to be developed their own for their own sake. They're going to might be copying some from online. I think they'll be mostly free. The ones that can be paid is the ones built by companies, especially internal tooling and internal ways of operating. They should be acting and should be developed skills. But those, I mean, you wouldn't want to sell your internal rules to the outside world. You're just going to pay for them to be developed internally and make use of them internally.
I think maybe if I can take the flip side of the argument, I think you're completely right. If and only if the company has the technical in-house skill sets in order to do that. But I think like we've seen in the business world, the equivalent of having consultants to the business world is basically having a skill to the business world. So it's kind of like this. So I think the consulting companies, the knowledge provisioning companies, maybe advisory companies for financial transactions, they probably might be on their roadmap, but to the people I talk to, let's say a bit of an insider knowledge pool here, they are thinking about engineering skills that might be used in their clients' agentic systems. Because they have this edge knowledge of, let's say, very specific, just as an example, very specific due diligence knowledge, very specific legal knowledge, very specific financial modeling knowledge, or very specific ways of architecting some sort of change management or whatever else there is, where you would usually go for a Capgemini, PwC, you would go for an M&A advisor, you would go to a McKinsey. Now, McKinsey and all these companies may be potentially in the future, they're actually engineering these skills. They're going to be run within the agentic system of their target clients. And this might be opening actually a new gateway of them actually monetizing their tacit knowledge, aka the knowledge they have in the consultants' heads, basically. Because there has been this conundrum in the stock markets, as well, we recently talked about it, where you saw all these titles pretty much crash, not only the SaaS titles, but also these knowledge provisioning companies, consulting, and other intelligence services, not the government, but basically like some knowledge intelligence like Gartner, Forrester, these types of companies. But I think there's still some pretty significant opportunity of them packaging what they know about business and the world, which is significant. There's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of individuals. They package this into skills. They sell these skills with their corporate trustworthy branding into the clients. And in the clients, the agents are actually deploying these skills into the engineered harness together with connectors. So I think that's a little bit what we've seen happening early 2026. And the big question mark, just to finish the point here, given what I've just said now, I think we need more engineers and not less. Well, that's a little bit the last argument on engineering. What's your take on where is this whole ship flowing in terms of maybe?
There has been that trend of hiring more. We started with that big question of whether AI would start replacing jobs and how quickly it would do it, and a lot of LinkedIn posts about it. The truth of the matter is, it's hard for them to build this kind of agent to be reliable enough to fully replace and have the accountability and have the kind of trust you could put in a person to put in this kind of agents. So we're still very much in the augmentation phase. We're seeing, however, this bounce back of people hiring more again. I think the expectation for each hire is for them to do more. The window
AI
of hiring
augmented for sure, yeah. Yeah.
The window of hiring, I think it's more close to the senior people because they trust that the senior developer can effectively be, if not 10x, then 2x, 3 or 4x by AI, while a junior guy is still learning and learn from AI, but it's not effectively being multiplied. And if you multiply very little knowledge, you still get somewhat little knowledge back. But there is this wave of hiring people back again, and I think we'll have always needed for the engineers to build things and to apply these AI agents to do whatever they need to actually interact with the world. I do think though that these AI agents are becoming more and more expensive. So you had that narrative of, oh, a coding AI agent can run like the whole day, doesn't stop, never breathes, never stops to sleep. And it'll cost you like $5 a day, while a real engineer will cost you like probably hundreds of dollars. That is no longer the case. We had this open question last year, which was, we either find ways to run these agents more cheaply or maintain the cost and run better and better models, better LLMs basically. And that has not been the case. I mean, the hardware is progressing, but not fast enough. Companies found out that people paying for AI are highly inelastic to the demand. So if they're willing to pay more, like you said, you went from no subscription to a $20 subscription to a $200 subscription. And a lot of people are. Claude came out with $200 subscription. People laughed about it. A couple months later, everyone was pretty much using it because it is worth it. However, if you're trying to replace people or even thinking about replacing people and running the numbers on Excel, you're starting to see that the cost benefit ratio is not that appealing. So augmenting an engineer, totally worth it. To try to fully replace it with something that's not as reliable and costs you almost the same, it doesn't add up to that much value, at least not for now, not with the current numbers, not with the current models. I think it could take a while, and I'm not seeing that the next models are going to be incredibly efficient. We have incremental values in efficiency, but they're very expensive to run, and we don't have that much power available anymore.
I mean, there's this element that is happening, that basically a large language model or basically any agent available to any employee is somewhat equivalent now to the salary cost of this said employee. Of course, not only one agent is running, but in other words, one employee might use so many agents all the time, 24/7, maybe multiple of them, that the actual cloud bill at the end of the month, or Anthropic's bill, if they're running it in the US, is equivalent to his monthly salary, his or her monthly salary. So that's a little bit the question, is like, is the productivity output double? Then yes, it kind of makes sense economically. But if it's only a little bit less than double, well, then the question is like, they're just burning through money. And why do we need both a very expensive agent and a fairly expensive human. So there is a little bit this balance, I think, that we're finding. In my case, I'm paying $200. Again, this is for the Anthropic subscription, not for our proprietary AWS, but these $200 per a month, they're yielding a significant augmentation of my productivity, much, much beyond $200. In just an example, the last 7 days, I've ran all these agents around. I usually just, there's even this schedule that you can do, for example, on Cowork or on Cloud Code. You can also, they were usually running the entire night. Like, for example, yesterday I gave it a task 11 p.m. And of course you see all the logs, and then also in the folder, I was asking it to populate some Excels and with some data that I would need it in the morning. And overnight, it worked until 5 a.m. So the last Excel that was being created was literally at 5 a.m. And then I could restart the day at 6 or 7 or 8. So it's actually already, while I'm sleeping, working fully.
It's
with
already
$200.
working like a full Deloitte employee, burning to
Exactly.
the night and then doing
Exactly.
your work for you. Yeah.
Now the question is, I saw this recent report on Harvard. Maybe I can put it on the screen. Harvard Business Review, that it makes employees more productive, but they also seem to be a lot more stressed and a lot more, I guess, under edge. And when I first read this, like, I didn't really fully believe and commit to it, but especially the last few weeks, being in this Cloud Code environment the whole day and Cloud Cowork the rest of the day while doing all the other work that I'm doing, it certainly made me more stressed. So, because you have this kind of FOMO that, wait a minute, my agent is not doing actual work. I need to make the agent go do some work when it finished a particular analysis. And that certainly made me personally a lot more stressed. It's pretty much like you have a startup, you hired your first hire, and you're burning through money, and the productivity of this first hire doesn't add up yet. You constantly want to probably make the first hire as productive as possible. That's kind of how I feel a little bit with
and you still have
Cloud
to
Cowork
read
and Code.
you still have to read all the output from it, and so you're never truly like rested or just delegating the work fully, because you still have to, like, you just hired, I think, the equivalent of an intern. You'll work until 5 a.m. You'll get your coffee, if you have like a smart coffee machine or something, but you still need to read the output. You still need to use it for whatever you want to do. And so he's not taking over the company for you, but he's always keeping you occupied with other things. And I think the expectation of how much you can deliver also increases exponentially with this kind of agents, and people are just pressed to deliver more and more. Usually it take like a week to build a new button on a website or to come up with some kind of model in Excel. And now with agents, like, you could have 10 different models in Excel and check which one's best, and build a whole new platform in a couple days.
I think it's a really, really good point that you're making up, because if you think about the pre-Excel age, I mean, I wasn't on in the finance game back then, but I would assume that most was done like manually, I guess, like there was some sort of other form factor there, private equity analysts or some other financial analyst person or an accountant would do computation pre-Excel. There might be some other more inefficient and less productive software they had. But even before the computer, they had some sort of other form factor. And every time there was a new tool coming out, like Excel, like the computer, almost immediately it was expected that this is the expected productivity, right? Because you couldn't say, hey, I'm actually a lot better employee because I have Excel. No, it's just expected that you work even more on Excel because this is the baseline productivity. And I think what you just mentioned probably chips into this. When we have agents that are actually being useful or actually being deployed in orgs, they are still not. They're still probably 10 months ahead. Most of the employees are probably just expected to deliver on this agentic AI productivity output. And for that, they need to upskill. They need to actually go there now. Like, they went to Excel and they went to computers. And it can't possibly completely be that in a few weeks after this moment is actually happening, everybody's expected to just deliver 10x more, and there is no differentiation. There's like no extra thing. You just have to do it. So it's a little bit a philosophical thing, but would make sense if you think back to the age of Excel. Sure, last question. Quick power question or two fast ones. OpenAI PR. And is SaaS dying? What's the two takes there?
If people are following, like, know about startups are on the in the VC world, they know this comes through two cycles where there's a lot of VC money, a lot of startups get funded. You see a lot of startups coming up, unicorns, $1 billion valuations, and then the money tightens and they actually have to make money. We saw I think the most famous case is Uber. When they first came out, that rides were super cheap. They took over the market. I think they pretty much killed taxi businesses in some cities. And it took, I think, a few years until rides actually got expensive. OpenAI did exact same thing, but with AI, as you know, things happen much quicker because it's the today's world pace. And ChatGPT was cheap. Most of the tokens were cheap. Running these models was cheap-ish. It was mostly being funded by the VC money. Now that the VC money is running out and it's getting harder to come by, tokens are expensive. Running the AI is expensive. Like you said, from a $0 subscription to a $200 one, these models are getting increasingly harder to run. Even for the infrastructure providers, the hardware is just not there, not building it fast enough. The power is just not there. And so they need money. And in this context comes OpenAI, which is like one of the major players, very heavily funded, very heavily reliant on VC money. And because it's heavily reliant on VC money, and because the VC money is a bit harder to come by now when investors expect results, they submit themselves and they saw this opportunity to go after a government contract, which is incredibly, I mean, I don't know the details. I think anyone outside the right rooms does, but it is incredibly profitable for them. Anthropic used to have that kind of exclusivity. Most governments use Anthropic, use cloud models because they're good and they're pretty reliable to build these agents on, especially if you're running like government stuff, legal documents, due diligence, and like even law enforcement analysis. Cloud is good for that kind of thing. I mean, they trained it for that. Anthropic drew a line in the sand in this kind of military weapon grade using of the cloud models. OpenAI took over and saw this opportunity for the government. They wouldn't risk the kind of PR backlash that they're getting. I mean, people all over the internet are just either uninstalling or threatening about uninstalling, overall very upset at Sam Altman, just the billionaire world in general. They wouldn't risk it if they actually didn't need the money. And so when people are desperate and when companies are getting a bit more desperate, you're going to see this kind of risky, bold moves that sometimes don't end up in the best kind of PRs. It might not be the last case that we see. They say that they got the government to back down on some kind of terms. It's not as malignant or as maleficent as we initially thought. It's hearsay for now, but I don't think it'll be the last scandal that we're going to see. Companies have to find ways to make this kind of thing profitable, and so they're willing to do pretty much anything.
Yeah, I mean it's a good take. Don't have much to add. I mean, multiple times I think Anthropic was basically put into some difficult situation, I guess, on this Pentagon issue now. But yeah, I think we still need to see. It's still an awesome model. Anthropic being mostly pushy on the enterprise side, OpenAI more on the B2C side. Maybe this levels out the playing field a little bit. Maybe I can just finish it off with the SaaS market crashing. Just to add my last 15, 20 seconds to that. I think it's valid for many of the companies that are being pressured in terms of pricing. I don't see any CRM company or any higher level software company charging $30,000 to $40,000 per month per seat. That doesn't seem to be realistic in an age where AI agents can do many of the greenfield heavy lifting. So there might be actually an internalization of software builds happening, where you can actually use junior to mid-level engineers, including the equipment of Agentic AI tooling, to actually rebuild many of the SaaS software. That's something that was more or less coming anyway. So all these, let's say again, high level, not AI native enterprises in SaaS might have some sort of a cost pressure to focus on. SaaS that's probably not being underpriced yet is all and everything associated to data. As we are fully aware, usually in the business context, agents are incredibly capable. Agents have a harness. Agents are skill affined. They have connectors. hardly ever are they well connected to data though. So that, I think, this data augmentation, data product availability, all this, like, it's been an old architectural concept, but this old data mesh concept, all these elements might still be valid, especially SaaS companies that are building AI natively, especially AI data availability services. That's one thing. The other thing might be still the security components. That probably still is valid, and even more valid if there's agent flying and running around in all the enterprises. And the last one is maybe the new form factor. The way we interact with agents is usually probably not through text. It might be through voice. It might be through some other form factor that we have yet to be figuring it out. So I don't see myself probably typing all the details to an agent. I might just be talking to an agent or my multiple array of agents. They go all about, maybe they speak to me like we humans do. If we get the most productive meetings, because we do meetings in voice and not meetings in text. It's usually, you get a lot more bytes of information through your colleagues if you talk, as opposed to chat in Microsoft Teams, the 5 of you. So that's a little bit my idea in SaaS. New form factors might be on the horizon. Security will stay and definitely become more important, and also data will be the key driver on agentic AI in 2026. Schwab, any other topic from your end?
No, but I think not only OpenAI is getting more bold, even regular companies are getting bolder, and that's affecting SaaS too. A lot of SaaS relied on these clients are never going to migrate away from us because they have some kind of lock-in. The migration fee is too hard, too painful. They don't want to have a whole team of engineers doing this for like 6 months. But now we have AI, and maybe that AI agents can do the whole, not super heavy lifting, but the painful lifting of migrating the kind of data, the kind of services, and seeing how it can work with some cheaper software. And so I think some companies are thinking about, and that then gets priced into the stock, thinking about migrating away from this super expensive software, because it's age of AI and age of new software, and they're using the same thing they've used for the last 2 decades and paying for the same thing for the last 2 decades. And it gets more expensive every year, and they have to renew the contracts every year, and companies get tired of it and they see a way to cut costs. Um, I think some might be successful. I think some, they're being hopeful and dreaming about it because, of course, there's a hype that AI agents can do anything. So it will bounce back eventually. It is a turbulent time, but we expect to bounce back.
Indeed. I mean, the third competitor point is probably Anthropic, Google, and Meta and OpenAI. They're probably looking at where are the tokens spent the most, maybe on what queries and what type of software production, and they're maybe actually in-house building all these SaaS. That's like the doomsday scenario. Like we've seen it with Claude for finance, we've seen it with Claude for legal, we've seen now with Claude for pretty much everything else. They have the capabilities, they have the LLM in-house, they have the best harness, they have the best skills. So you might be need to be niched down in a particular software segment that Anthropic is not touching, or have a geographical advantage, maybe like Europe, maybe like Switzerland, where it's not too attractive, but you can still have a good home market. Great show. That was episode 44. And for everybody in the audience, we are back on track shooting these episodes, ideally weekly, sharing the best and most cutting-edge insights into building on AI agents, usually delivered on Friday on YouTube and also on TikTok. See you in the next one. Schwab. Bye-bye.
See you next week.